it doesn't help that he's not really, when you think of a traditional third line center with the Penguins, you think of like a Stahl or a Bonito, someone that kills penalties, and he doesn't do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and this is something that I don't think will go away for a little bit, but I think Penguin fans have been ruined having Jordan Stahl as a third line center
Yeah.
because he did it all. And I think a lot of people had trouble admitting that when he was here, but he did so many little things right. And he was so effective, especially towards the end of his time here, doing what he did. And yeah, he made way too much on his contract. And even though we offered it, he obviously wanted a bigger role. So there's not much we could have done regardless. But with Brassard, you don't get that. And like you said, it's hard if he's not scoring, if he's not meshing. You can't point to his penalty killing and say, well, at least he's doing this. I mean, he's not really he's not a top power play unit guy. He doesn't really have a niche, right? I mean, that's what kept Hagelin around for so long. And I mean, Hagelin, when he wasn't scoring, he went, what was it, like 2 goals over 30 plus games last season, at the beginning of last season for Hagelin? Yeah. He was penalty killing, and he was helping others get scoring chances with his feet. That's just not the case for Brassard, and I don't think they would have a problem finding a suitor for him. A lot of teams could use a Brassard, especially a lot of bubble teams or teams who are out west who have an injury. I think of the Golden Knights as a potential fit with some of the issues they've been having, at least until some of their centers come back from injury, which I think isn't going to happen till March. But it's like, teams like that could really use a player like Brassard without the penalty killing stuff. It's just the Penguins with Malkin and Crosby and Gensel, Kessel have a lot of top-heavy, top-6 talented forwards that don't kill penalties.
Yeah. I mean, and it just might be what you said. You can't just, one trade is not going to fix things, but maybe if you trade somebody that's not really a fit, maybe that does help.
Oh, I'm sure. And I mean, the third line is such an important pivot for this team. And I mean, going back to talking about speed, the third line would probably be number 2 on my list of things that have set this team apart in past years that the league has now caught up to.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, you don't really have 2 top line centers that can match Crosby and Malkin anywhere in the league outside of maybe Toronto, right? And I still think that's a stretch. Maybe Washington's getting closer with Backstrom and Kuznetsov. You don't have anybody in that third pivot that can really do damage. And every time the Penguins have proven to be effective, they've had one of the strongest third lines in the league. You had the HBK line. You had the Stahl Cook Kennedy line, or they just ate up opposing teams, taking advantage, like I said, of the weaker defensive pairings, of short-handed chances a lot of times. I think exploring a Brassard trade option wouldn't be the worst thing to help the team. I mean, I don't think it's going to fix some of the systematic issues, because I don't think goal scoring is their biggest issue, because I think that will come once you fix the defense. And It's hard, and I'll admit, it's incredibly hard to fix the defense when you're down, even for a couple games, Chris Letang and Justin Schultz. Like, how do you overcome that in any defense, right?
Yeah.
And they've gotten lucky, or I won't even say lucky. I'll say I think they made some very smart moves, bringing in someone like Ricola as a fallback. And, Pettersson has proven to be a pretty capable defenseman so far. for the most part. He still has some kinks to work out, but he's also been kind of thrown in the fire. But you just have people on this defense who are really struggling to get the game flowing. And I mean, Johnson, as much as I harp on him, isn't alone on this. Oli Mata has been probably one of the most frustrating Penguins this entire season. You especially since he has it. He has talent, he has a skill, but he looks like he's lost a step. He seems like he's lost the confidence. He doesn't seem ready whenever he has the puck. And he makes plays that just make you want to scream.
Matt is just so frustrating. I mean, in the last game, he basically lead to one of their Anaheim's goals.
Yeah, and I think it was the same case in the Chicago game. He just, it's one of those things where he has the yips almost. Like, he just has no confidence in his ability to play hockey. And he gets the puck on his stick, and he blanks. And it's kind of like Brassard. You want to root for him. He has the talent. He can do it. But it's just not happening. And it's now consistent enough that I think it's it wasn't 1 or 2 games. It wasn't a week. It wasn't a month. It's been the entire season this has been happening, and he hasn't snapped out of it. And I'd be surprised if Sullivan doesn't recognize the problem, but I don't think there's much Sullivan can do when you're already so shorthanded on defense.
Right. Sullivan did have this interesting quote. Sometimes the biggest hammer a coach has is ice time. There have been situations over the last little while where the coaching staff has utilized that. There's not something that this coaching staff likes to do. We want our guys to take ownership of their own respective games. I mean, he benched Gensel for a bit of time last game because he made a horrific mistake. I mean, is that what could be next? I mean, for Matta is maybe make him a healthy scratch sometimes.
Well, I mean, once Letang's back, sure. I don't think it would hurt for him to see a game or two from the press box. But at the same time, and we talked about this last time, Johnson's been far worse than Mata, at least in my opinion. He's been consistently a turnover machine. Yeah, he's been putting the Penguins in positions that just hurt them more than anything. And Johnson won't be benched. As we talked about last time, I don't think there's anything Johnson could do to get himself benched because of what happened in the offseason with Torts and the Blue Jackets. And, the Penguins stepping up to defend him in the way they did. Sullivan's a proud guy. He can only wield the ice time hammer if he does it evenly. And if players feel there's a rhyme and reason behind it. If I'm Oli Mata and I'm getting benched because I make a mistake, why is the guy making 2 mistakes for every one of my mistakes not getting benched? Like, it's one of those things, if you're at work and your coworker's the one screwing up and you're the only one getting yelled at, you're kind of like, well, I need to have a talk with my supervisor, right?
Right.
If Sullivan tries that, that's a one-way street to losing the team, losing the locker room. I mean, you saw that with Bausma. Therrien was notorious for that. I don't really have any thoughts on how Johnson did it because he didn't really make a difference or impact in any kind of meaningful way. But like Bausma towards the end of his career or his time in Pittsburgh tried to do that, and it just completely and totally backfired on him because he played favorites.
Yeah.
I mean, as much as you love the guy personally, Tyler Kennedy got more ice time than people who never got a chance. And you looked at it and was like, what does Kennedy have that we're missing? There must be something that Bausma sees, right?
He had the amazing ability to shoot the puck right at the goalie's chest.
Yes, I mean,
every time.
pinpoint accuracy on it. And it's like I said, it's not that Kennedy wasn't a great guy, right? But he didn't bring anything to the table that anybody else couldn't bring in some way, shape, or form, like Connor Sherry once he got the chance. And it's frustrating when you're a winger, especially, and you see something like that happen. Why, if you can't figure it out for yourself, why is he getting playing time over me? This doesn't make sense. It just adds and adds and adds. And then every time you have the puck, that's what's in your head.
Yeah.
You get the puck, you have 2 seconds to make a decision. You're spending 1 second in the back of your mind thinking about that. Well, you just lost your advantage with the puck.
Yep. Yep. Another problem, I think, is in previous years they had exceptional goaltending with Fleury and Murray, and now Murray's been hurt. DeSmith's okay, but he's basically average. I mean, sometimes he has good games. I mean, but could that be another problem? Is the goaltending is not making up for some of the deficiencies?
So, I mean, I think the difference. I always saw Fleury as a bit of a Grant Fuhr type. He was never going to be the best goaltender on the ice, right? But he would make the important saves when they needed to be made. And that's what Fleury did best. Murray was much more of a steady kind of, almost like a Brodeur type, where he would stop pucks. He wouldn't do anything terribly flashy most of the time. But you could rely on him for most games. It's really hard with Murray being injured and being so thrown off of his game. And, for goaltenders, they're such a weird breed. It's all about rhythm. It's all about confidence. It's all about mind games. DeSmith comes in and he'll make the flashy save, but he's not consistent. And same thing for Jari. Jari's maddeningly inconsistent in the sense that he will put on a stunner of a game. Just a downright amazing game. And the next game he will look like an AHL goaltender. I can't remember a goaltender who's been more black and white between games. It's frustrating because the Penguins don't have other options. Yeah. This is the hand, partially they've been dealt. This is the cards they've played. But all of it for me comes back to the fact that more often than not, they've been hung out to dry in almost every game. Both by the forwards, by the defense, pretty much by everyone. It's been a team effort to really just completely abandon the puck in the defensive end and let the goaltenders fend for themselves. And, even the best goaltenders could only handle so much of that. I want to say it's been New Jersey this year who's had a bit of a rough go of it. Corey, I forget the numbers, but Corey Schneider hasn't won a game at home in like 19 games or something like that. And part of the problem they're having is similar. They just give up so many opportunities defensively that even a goaltender who's good like Schneider can't handle it. And there's only so much goaltenders can do before they end up like Patrick Waugh wanting to throw their stick across the ice, or it's part of the reason I never played goaltender anytime I've played hockey, is because I don't trust the people in front of me to not hang me out to dry and not let people like Artemi Panarin come in on a breakaways.
Yeah. Oh man, it's just so frustrating because they were doing all right. There's games where they've been picking it up lately, and then they just have a game like last night, and you just scratch your head like oh my goodness, what is wrong with these people? But we'll see what happens. This is it's going to be a very interesting next couple months, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, so I was thinking back, it was about 3 years ago when they fired Johnson. So, I mean, like this week, it was this week about 3 years ago when they fired Johnson as head coach.